There is something happening in bedrooms across this country that almost no one talks about. Not with friends, not with family, and for most men, not even with their doctor. She reaches for you, and you feel nothing. Not anger, not rejection, just nothing. The desire isn't there, and you lie there in the dark wondering what is wrong with you, wondering if this is permanent, wondering if she thinks it's about her, wondering if the man you used to be is simply gone. If you are over 60 and you have experienced this, I need you to hear something clearly before we go any further. You are not broken. You are not less of a man. And what is happening to you has a very specific biological explanation that most doctors never take the time to give you. My name is Dr. Elena Vargas. I am a urologist, and I have spent 2 decades sitting across from men carrying exactly what you are carrying right now. Silently, alone, and without answers. Today, that changes. I am going to explain exactly what happens to the male libido after 60, why desire disappears even when love doesn't, and what can actually be done about it. Stay with me, because the third factor I am going to explain is the one that surprises men the most. Let's start at the beginning. When a man tells me his desire has disappeared, the first thing I do is not reach for a prescription pad. The first thing I do is ask him to describe exactly what he means. Because there is a critical distinction that most men, and honestly, most general practitioners, fail to make. There is a difference between the inability to perform and the absence of wanting to perform. These are two entirely different biological problems with two entirely different causes. And confusing them leads to the wrong solutions, the wrong conversations, and sometimes the wrong medications. What we are talking about today is the second one, the loss of desire itself. The clinical term is hypoactive sexual desire disorder in men, but the lived experience is far simpler and far more devastating. You wake up one morning and realize that something you once took for granted, something that was simply part of who you were as a man, is quietly no longer there. And the worst part? It usually happens so gradually that by the time you notice it, it has already been going on for months, sometimes years. So what is actually causing it? Let me walk you through the three primary mechanisms, and I want you to pay close attention because understanding these is the difference between helplessness and having real options. The first mechanism is the one most people have heard of, but very few people truly understand. Testosterone. By the time a man reaches 60, his testosterone levels are typically 30 to 40% lower than they were in his 30s. By 70, that decline continues. And unlike many hormonal changes in the body, this one is gradual enough that most men never notice it happening in real time. They just notice the result. Here is what testosterone actually does in the context of desire, because this is where most explanations stop too early. Testosterone does not create arousal. What testosterone does is lower the threshold for arousal. Think of it like the volume dial on a radio. When testosterone is high, it takes very little signal to get a strong response. When testosterone is low, the signal has to be significantly louder just to register at all. This means that things which used to trigger desire automatically, a touch, a glance, a moment of closeness, no longer produce the same effect. The signal is the same. The threshold has changed, and that shift is invisible to the men experiencing it, which is why so many of them conclude, incorrectly, that something must be wrong with their relationship, or with their partner, or with themselves. Research from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism confirms that low testosterone is directly associated with reduced sexual desire, independent of erectile function. A man can have low desire and still be capable of an erection. These systems are connected, but they are not the same. But testosterone alone rarely tells the whole story. There is a second mechanism operating simultaneously, and for many men over 60, this one is doing more damage. The second mechanism is cortisol. And if testosterone is the volume dial, cortisol is the hand that keeps turning it down. Here is the biology. Testosterone and cortisol are both produced from the same precursor molecule, pregnenolone. Your body decides, based on the signals it receives, whether to convert it into testosterone or cortisol. When you are under chronic stress, financial pressure, health anxiety, relationship tension, your body interprets that as a threat. And in the presence of a threat, the body prioritizes cortisol every time. This means chronic stress is not just emotionally draining. It is biochemically stealing the raw material your body needs to produce testosterone. A landmark study from the Psychoneuroendocrinology Journal confirmed that men with chronically elevated cortisol showed significantly suppressed testosterone, even when their diet and physical health were otherwise adequate. And here is what makes this particularly cruel for men in long-term relationships. The very stress of noticing that desire has decreased, the anxiety of wondering what is wrong, the pressure of feeling like you are letting your partner down, generates more cortisol, which further suppresses testosterone, which further reduces desire, which generates more anxiety. It is a physiological loop, and once a man is inside it, escaping without understanding what is happening is nearly impossible. But there is a third mechanism, and this is the one that I promised would surprise you most. Prolactin. Most men have never heard of prolactin in this context. It is a hormone most commonly associated with breastfeeding in women, but men produce it too, and in men over 60, elevated prolactin levels are a clinically recognized and dramatically underdiagnosed cause of vanishing libido. Here is how it works. Prolactin and dopamine exist in a relationship of direct opposition in the brain. When dopamine is high, prolactin is suppressed. When prolactin rises, dopamine activity drops. And dopamine is the neurochemical at the heart of desire, not just sexual desire, but motivation, anticipation, and the drive toward reward of any kind. When prolactin chronically elevates in men, which can happen due to aging, certain medications, disrupted sleep architecture, or even chronic low-level stress, it does not just reduce sexual desire. It flattens the entire motivational landscape. Men with elevated prolactin describe feeling not just uninterested in sex, but generally flat, less excited about things they used to enjoy, less present, less themselves. And this is why so many men in this situation are misdiagnosed with depression, or told their relationship is the problem, or simply told that this is what getting older looks like. It is not what getting older has to look like. Prolactin levels are measurable with a simple blood test. They are addressable, but they are only addressable if someone checks them, and most standard annual physicals do not include prolactin in the panel. I want to pause here and say something directly to any man who is watching this and recognizing himself in what I have described. What you are experiencing is not weakness. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that you love your partner less, or that your relationship is failing, or that the best years of your life are behind you. It is a measurable physiological shift driven by hormones that can be tested, understood, and in many cases, improved. The worst thing you can do is stay silent. The second worst thing you can do is assume it will resolve on its own. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Thomas. He was 68 years old when he first came to my office. He had been with his wife for 34 years. By his account, she was patient. She did not pressure him. She told him it did not matter. But he could see it in her eyes, the quiet hurt of reaching for someone and being met with absence. Thomas had not experienced a natural desire for intimacy in nearly 2 years. He had managed on occasion to be present physically, but the hunger, the wanting, was gone. He had stopped initiating entirely. He had started going to bed later than his wife on purpose, just to avoid the moment of possibility and the shame of feeling nothing. When we ran a complete hormonal panel, the picture was clear. His free testosterone was significantly below the reference range for his age. His cortisol was elevated, consistent with chronic stress, and his prolactin, which his previous doctor had never tested, was nearly double the upper limit of normal. Thomas did not need a lecture about desire. He needed an explanation. He needed someone to show him the numbers and say, here is what is happening inside your body. This is not a mystery. This is biology. With the right combination of targeted lifestyle adjustments, specific nutritional support, and, in his case, a conversation about sleep quality and medication review, Thomas's prolactin normalized over the following months. His testosterone recovered to the lower range of normal. His cortisol, with some specific stress management tools that I will describe in a moment, began to come down. 6 months after that first appointment, he told me something I will not forget. He said, I stopped feeling like a husband. Now I feel like her husband again. That is what understanding the real cause of something can do. Now I want to shift to what you can actually do. Because information without application is just anxiety with better vocabulary. There are 4 areas where men over 60 can make meaningful, evidence-supported changes that directly address all 3 of the mechanisms we have discussed. The first area is sleep. The majority of your daily testosterone is produced during deep sleep, specifically during slow wave and REM phases. Research from the University of Chicago found that men who slept less than 5 hours per night for 1 week had testosterone levels equivalent to men 10 years older. 1 week, 5 hours, 10 years of hormonal aging. If you are waking multiple times at night to urinate, that is not just a urological issue. It is an endocrine issue, stealing testosterone from you night after night. The second area is movement, specifically the right kind of movement. Extended moderate intensity exercise, particularly resistance training, has been shown in multiple studies to acutely raise testosterone and simultaneously lower cortisol in men over 60. I am not recommending marathon training. I am recommending 30 minutes of resistance-based movement 3 times per week as a minimum. This is the clinically supported threshold at which hormonal benefits become measurable. The third area is what I call the cortisol audit. Most men cannot eliminate stress, but most have never systematically identified which specific triggers are generating the highest cortisol load. Targeted reduction is far more effective than general advice to relax. I ask patients to name the 3 recurring situations each week that leave them most depleted, and then we look at what structural changes, not just coping strategies, are available. The fourth area, and perhaps the most counterintuitive, is intimacy itself, defined more broadly than sex. Here is something the research shows clearly. Physical closeness, skin contact, and emotionally safe connection with a partner directly suppress cortisol and increase oxytocin. Oxytocin, in turn, has been shown to support dopamine function, the very neurotransmitter that underlies desire. In other words, non-sexual physical intimacy is not a consolation prize when desire is low. It is actually one of the neurochemical pathways through which desire can begin to return. This is often the hardest thing for men to hear, because when desire is absent, the instinct is to withdraw, to avoid situations that might create expectation and end in disappointment. But that withdrawal is physiologically counterproductive. It removes the very inputs the nervous system needs to begin rebuilding the motivation pathways that desire depends on. Closeness without pressure is not a compromise. It is medicine. I want to address something before we close. Testosterone replacement therapy and medications for elevated prolactin are real tools with real evidence. For some men, they are the right path forward, but they are not the starting point, and not appropriate for every man without careful evaluation. When you speak to your doctor, ask for a complete hormonal panel, not just total testosterone, but free testosterone, SHBG, LH, FSH, prolactin, and a full metabolic profile. Ask specifically about prolactin. Most standard physicals never check it. Informed patients get better care. Knowing what to ask for is the difference between generic reassurance and real answers. Let me leave you with this. The men I worry about are not the ones who come to my office. The men I worry about are the ones who never come, the ones who decide somewhere along the way that this is simply the cost of getting older. that wanting less is just what happens, that the quiet withdrawal from desire and from closeness is a door that, once closed, does not open again. I am here to tell you that door is not locked. In many cases, it is not even fully closed. It is being held shut by biological forces that have names, that have measurable markers, and that respond to intervention. You deserve to want. You deserve to feel that pull toward the person you love. You deserve to inhabit your body the way you once did, not because it makes you more masculine or more valuable, but because desire is one of the ways we feel alive. It is one of the ways we stay connected to ourselves and to the people who matter to us. If what I have described today sounds familiar, please do not carry it quietly any longer. Talk to a urologist or an endocrinologist. Ask for the right tests. Bring this conversation into the light. Because the biology can be addressed, the hormones can be measured, the loop can be broken, and the man who looked at his wife and felt nothing, with the right understanding and the right support, can become the man who reaches for her first. That is not a promise. That is what I have watched happen in real examining rooms with real men over 20 years of practice. And it starts with being willing to ask why.